Normally I only review payware content in TS Classic or Train Sim World 4, but I recently had the idea to break the mold at least once. And for once, we've actually got a good product up for review today. This is my 2 cents on the Pennsylvania Railroad S1 steam locomotive, brought to Train Simulator by a Brazilian developer called DSGDDR. For some historical context, the Pennsylvania Railroad S1 was a one-off locomotive built at Altoona Works in 1939. She had streamlining designed by Raymond Loewy, and was the only locomotive ever built with a 6-4-4-6 wheel arrangement. This meant that only around 48% of her weight rested on the driving wheels, and wheel slip was a frequent issue throughout her life. Along with the Pensy's T1, Q1 and Q2 classes, the S1 is often referred to as a duplex due to the bizarre layout of her driving wheels, of which there were 2 separate sets, but these were not articulated. Due to her severely limited route availability, the S1 was largely confined to the line from Chicago, Illinois to Crestline, Ohio. And perhaps unsurprisingly, she didn't last too long in service, eventually being scrapped in 1949 when she was only 10 years old. The S1 in Train Simulator is a freeware add-on available through the website linked in the description. From what I've seen, DSGDDR has made some good models, not just based on the S1, but other Pennsy steamers like the I1SA Class 210 and E6S Class 442, even the iconic New York Central J3A Hudson to boot. For the S1, the developer included both skirted and de-skirted variants, but you don't get 6100 in her New York World's Fair condition, when she had American Railroads lettering on the tender instead of it saying Pennsylvania Railroad. Regardless, I think these are very good for freeware models, and apart from the base game, of course, you do not need any other add-ons installed in order to run DSGDDR's products. And although it's not Pennsy territory, one route that I recommend downloading for these engines is the Bessemer Lake Erie route. While I was messing around with the big 210, I noticed that she has crazy and overpowered physics. She also pulls the railroads online when you apply full emergency brakes. And I will now demonstrate the physics. Continuing with the trend of good modelling, we now turn to the S1's footplate, where the most notable detail, for me at least, is the mechanical stoker. And it's hardly surprising that a locomotive with a grate area of 12.3 square metres had one of these. You can press F to pay respects, as well as holding open the firebox doors. The gauges are all legible, as are the little labels below the red valve wheels. Just about every lever and little red wheel is clickable, which helps with the immersion, and I just like the overall colour temperature of this footplate. Lastly, there's this plaque that the developer modelled behind the fireman's seat, and it's nice to see little personal touches like this. I don't think any of us are experts on what the real S1 would have sounded like, but one thing to note is the engine's bizarre lack of a whistle. Instead, she has an air horn. As she's been puffing along, I noticed that the S1 has clanking sounds reused from the Kuju era Black 5 and 7F, although these clanking sounds are a bit difficult to hear. I don't think the chuffing sounds are all that good, but I will give the developer a pass this time because of the S1's freeware status. Sounds like this would not be acceptable on a payware product in this day and age. In both real life and a train simulator, the S1 is very restricted on where she can go due to her long rigid wheelbase. Indeed, this was the longest rigid frame steam locomotive ever built. One time, I managed to drive this thing on a short section of the Bessemer Lake Erie route, specifically between Albion and Conneaut Lake. This route is now available as a freeware download from Railworks America under the Pennsylvania Steam title. Speaking of routes made by G-Tracks, one route where I wouldn't dare test the S1 is the Sacramento Northern Interurban line, due to the often horrendously sharp curves throughout the route. But then again, such a route was never designed to accommodate huge locomotives in the first place, and the SN is still one of my favourite routes in the whole game, although I don't drive on it too often. I also tried a 6100 on the old Horseshoe Curve route, managing a run from Crescent to Johnstown. But from what I've heard, this locomotive can't actually get round the Horseshoe Curve itself. Although she's fairly slow off the mark, the S1 is a very fast locomotive, provided that she's got enough space to get up to a decent speed. I tried running her on the Aurora to Chicago route, and got her up to 110 miles per hour between Westmont and Clarendon Hills. The physics must have been nerfed at some point, because I remember seeing Heiss get this thing up to and beyond Mallard's speed record on one of his live streams. Even though I don't use her too often, due to her limited route availability, I still like the Pennsylvania Railroad S1. She's one of my favourite American steam locomotives, and I would go so far as to say that this thing is better than the old RSC/DTG K4 Pacific model, which, by the way, is a payware add-on that costs 11 New Zealand dollars while only including one variant. Yes, that's right, 3768 with streamlining, 1188 with her skyline casing, and 5038 with huge smoke deflectors are nowhere to be seen. After looking around the S1 and taking her for a spin a few times, I still can't believe that this thing is freeware. She's that good.